up, guys? It's that time again. Joe Neal here, your favorite fight analysis, favorite analyst, here to recap Fight Night Font versus Vera, or as I now refer to it as the Vera Chainsaw Massacre, as there was some extremely insane face changing going on in that main event. But enough talk. Let's get to the fights. So first off, in the main event, we had a bantamweight fight that turned into a catchweight fight as Font missed weight, but that blunder wasn't enough for me to stop being super hyped about this fight. It's two top 10 guys who bring a ton of action with great technique and skill in the best division in the world. And that's just not just my opinion. That's the objective truth. Coming into the fight, I figured the game plan would be Font wanting to use his just super slick boxing to kind of dictate the pace of the fight for 5 rounds, while Chito was either going to try and meet him in the middle or clinch up and make it a dirtier fight. Instead, Chito actually showed off some great counter striking, and I also got to showcase what I think is probably the best killer instinct in the division, as you know, this fight kind of solidified him as one of the reasons why he's in my first team all violence starting lineup. Um, he's fantastic. Not quite a Hall of Famer like a Justin Gaethje or Matt Brown, but he's up there. And out of the gate, my prediction for the game plan, kind of came true as a really clean jab with great combinations from Font. I often talk about pressure in these recaps, and one thing I haven't specified before in the recaps is the different types of them. I don't want to go into it forever because I could just sit here and just talk and break things down. Maybe on my own channel one day I'll you know, do that, make a long video for it, but no worries. Instead, I'll just go real quick over this. So Font has a great understanding of range, and typically in his fights, he has this amazing jab, and he uses it to either use it to step in so he can start landing combinations or a right hand, or to assert his preferred range. And he typically walks guys down with his jab, and he has very little risk of opponents countering his aggression, as he's usually forcing them to turtle up constantly so he can start throwing these combinations. Even if he's hitting elbows and shoulders or forearms, he's usually able to kind of take the opponent out of the fight by constantly turtling up. You can't throw back if you're doing that constantly. And if fighters try to step in on his aggression, he's usually throwing a snap kick right back to really keep his preferred range. So that's kind of how this first round went in a nutshell. If Font wasn't pressing forward, then Cheeto was throwing a hard kick. He had a really hard slapping, just bang sound with the left body kick that hit the forearm as well, or hit the bicep, excuse me. But for the most part, the Rob Font show, Cheeto was defending this aggression well, and that's something to consider moving forward, as he was keeping a high guard, taking shots on the elbows and the forearms primarily, and so while the numbers were high, which is something I'll talk about a little later, it wasn't anything too wasn't anything too damaging, but he was losing the fight or the round. Second round, another quick start for Font. He landed a really good left hook at the end of a combination early on, closing the door, which is the idea that when you throw a combination, you don't end on your rear hand or your rear side, because it takes this much longer to pop back into a defensive stance, whereas you do with your lead side, then it's just simple. Little tidbit. And Cheeto is starting to try and counter the jab now. Instead of just blocking it and stepping back, he starts trying to counter it. And the jab in MMA has been a more common weapon in the last 10 years or so, it feels like. And fighters are always trying to find new ways to take this away from their opponent. I believe calf kicks was one of the first things people were doing to counter jabs. And Cheeto started doing this by throwing a counter jab of his own because they have similar reaches. And one of these counters was really good, as Font is stepping in constantly with his jab, and Cheeto is able to catch him with a simultaneous counter that breaks Font's nose, it looks like. Then, near the end of the round, Font's starting to let off the oppression, because let off some pressure because of the counter jabs, and Cheeto just steps in with a beautiful left hook, cracks him, lands some nasty elbows and ground and pound, and nearly finishes the fight, I thought. But, round ends. Survival from Font. And, well, that there right there is the nature of the rest of the fight. As Font is landing great count combinations, he's landing great shots, but he just isn't uh like able to almost defend from the counters coming in. He doesn't have the best head movement when he's stepping in with shots, so his head's kind of right there, and Chito can just blast him with counter jabs or like just combinations at times. In the third round, he landed a pretty good shot and then threw a step up knee after switching stances seamlessly. Another thing I always rave about on here. And in the fourth round, it was a rear leg hook kick that dropped Font. And then in the fifth round, while there wasn't a major drop for Chito, he was starting to run away with the fight. Like, it was pretty clear, I felt. He started just kind of taunting him, Font, though. He blocked an uppercut and kind of taunted him, did a little dance, like looking for where the uppercut was supposed to go. And then later on, he hurts Font, starts kind of pressuring him, trying to get the finish, but not rushing in. Just smart pressure to try and get it. And Font sidesteps him while he's still rocked, and Chito grabs the cage and gives the crowd a little bit of a twerk show. It's pretty nice. I didn't see any singles get thrown in, thankfully. But Chito takes a great unanimous decision win and adds another signature win onto his resume. And it's probably the biggest one, as I've recently said that on Twitter. I recently said, finishing and beating aging vets, or like, I used a harsher word, but guys who aren't proven and don't have the best record doesn't really make a signature win. This is a signature win, clearly. 9 out of 10 fight for me. It's a fight that kind of checks all the boxes for me, as it had great pace, constant action, along with a great technical highlights I can just analyze for a while. So just checks all my boxes. One thing to bring up before I delve into what's next: what constitutes a significant strike? Because Font's output was insane, but he was hitting the forearms and elbows a decent amount. And Chito, after the fight, didn't look like he was really in a fight, while Font looked like he just got attacked by Leatherface. I mean, okay, granted, Chito did land like the harder shots and had nearly finished him multiple times, but the numbers just seemed outrageous to me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy and Chito just has unpenetrable skin. Next up in the co-main event, we have the big boys, as Andrei Arlovski takes on Jake Collier. And Twitter exploded after this fight. People were calling this a massive robbery. And so I was, I managed to watch this one late. I just woke up late today. I work overnights normally, so schedule's a little different. And so I was actually kind of interested, because I was like, oh, how bad of a robbery is it? Well, after sitting through, all 3 rounds, seeing multiple clashes of heads, and listening to Dom be a contrarian to Bisping's analysis and commentary, I now had to have a definitive answer if it is a robbery or not. Yeah, I was. Absolutely. So Jake was pressuring with big kicks while Andre was pumping out jabs backwards and throwing snap kicks up the middle to the gut. And I thought Jake was like really controlling the pace of the fight. It's kind of similar to the Font Vera one, where Font is pushing the pace and kind of controlling space, and Vera's on the outside trying to circle. But you have to look at how the strikes are going. So if you're just backing up and you're landing jabs and throwing kicks out, and your opponent is the one that's actually landing, not hitting guard, and is landing and is kind of having success with his pressure, then I have to lean towards the pressure. Okay, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to look like a hypocrite here on how I score these fights. But I thought Jake was controlling, a good portion of the stand-up. He did get his nose bloodied in round 3, but I still thought he won round 3 with the striking alone. He was also pushing Andre to the cage, landing great knees whenever he wanted, and he even took him down at the end of the 3rd round. Just a bad decision. Just a rough one. Reform the judges or the scoring criteria. or just have me judge all the fights. 6.5 out of 10 for me. It was better than most recent Andrei Arlovski fights, but this one isn't worth hunting down if you haven't seen it, I think. Next up, we have a good lightweight scrap between Jared Gordon and Grant Dawson. Both guys have been streaking lately, and I was interested in this one, especially after seeing the come from behind knockout finish of Leonardo Santos that Grant Dawson had. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. And this one was kind of just a showcase for Grant Dawson's grappling and wrestling, as he spent a majority of the time on Gordon's back, just controlling. And if you look at the takedowns in his control time, you'll see that once he got him to the mat, he was keeping him there. This wasn't like a case of Habib and Abel Trujillo, where Habib's like, he had an injury going in, but he was constantly just picking up Trujillo and slamming him like 20 something times, all these highlight reel slams. This was one takedown, and I'm controlling you for the round. And not so much like a lay and pray, there was action. He was mostly kind of jockeying for position, trying to get submissions going and landing some ground and pound. Eventually, in the third round, Dawson did take his back and got the rear naked choke. So far, Dawson's unbeaten in the UFC, and he's had some very impressive outings, I think, these last two in particular. So he might be worth keeping an eye on in the future. He might be the secret dark horse that's going to break into the top 15 soon, so I would suggest keeping an eye out for him. Lastly, we had Andre Fili versus Joe Anderson Brito. Out of the gate, Brito was landing some great calf kicks, which is smart as Fili has great calf kicks. After some feeling out, two massive jabs step in for Brito, and they're knocking the head back, and then just a huge overhand right bomb drops Fili, and he just hammers home like until Fili's just gone. And I think this is a pretty good win, pretty good quick knockout. I think it was like 50 seconds or so. I think Fili is a a gatekeeper for the top 15. I feel like he's that guy you put right there. So it was kind of interesting in the matchmaking, but I don't know. It might be worth watching Brito in the future because this was a great performance. But that's it for me, guys. Be sure to check out next weekend as I'll be recapping the pay-per-view, which is sure to be a banger. Please. Also, that video I've teased in the past, well, it's on its way, and it sounds like it'll be on the main channel. So let's get ready for next week at the premiere of a series that me and Carl are really hoping gets huge. I think we have something special here. Also, be sure to check out the latest video on the main channel as it talks about the legend himself, Minotauro Nogueira. It's awesome. I loved it. But this is Joe Neal of the INC family. Thank you for watching.